Okay, guys, I thought it might be useful that we actually do a screencast and talk you through in a bit more detail about the team project reflection. It's probably the most complex part of the GP sort of program. Certainly the most complex part in terms of your coursework that you will need to do. You have obviously done a portion of the coursework already, which is what you did with your individual essay. Okay, that was obviously very much more looking at it from sort of academic kind of writing. We're looking at this from a reflective writing process. Okay, so this is based, it's a personal account of your experience going through the team project. Now, I know your experience this year has been very disjointed in compared to other years, what with the protests and what with school being shut now with the coronavirus and things. However, we can still write this and we can still work on this and you can still come out with a top mark from this. Okay, so it's something that you're going to write when we put this together. It is written in the first person. You are talking about your personal experience, your personal views. We want your opinions in here. It is not just a descriptive story. It's not just you telling us this is what we did, this is what happened next. Okay, we'll talk more about what we're expecting as we kind of go through this. I thought what we'd do to start with is kind of go through some do's and don'ts with regards to writing this. Okay, obviously this is a team project. Okay, however, you are writing a personal reflection. This is not somewhere where you need to tell everyone how bad John and how bad Bob was actually in your team and how useless they are. Okay, sort of putting people down and putting people in a negative light is not going to sort of work to your favor in terms of writing this. Okay, so leave individual names out of this. All right, they're not important in this. The IE awards that you're doing right now is separate from your GP program. Okay, so if you start talking about I was a director, I was an editor, okay, the people assessing you for the global perspectives will have no understanding what you're talking about there. Okay, the two are very different, so you need to treat them differently. Okay, the IE award is the process of you creating this video and going through all those tools. The global perspectives is actually you undertaking this service learning, this form of action. Okay, as I mentioned, don't just tell a story. Okay, you need to gonna explore this and need to explain why you did things, and more importantly, what would you do differently next time? Okay, and again, we're going to go to that a lot more depth later on. Be honest. Okay, it doesn't matter if yours was an absolute disaster. Okay, it doesn't matter if you've not achieved any of your aims or objectives. As long as you reflect on why you haven't, you can still get full marks in this. So don't sort of sound out that you're the best in the world, that, we're going to solve, the coronavirus by, doing this and that. You're not, okay? So just think about it, be honest, share the mistakes that you've made, okay? Share the successes that you've had as well. Really tough part with this is you can only get 1,000 words. Now that might seem like a lot when you start, but once you get going, it is very, very little. Okay, so be selective. We don't need to know all the details about your strengths and all the details about your weaknesses. Pick and choose what you feel is important and offer a diverse range as you kind of go through this. Okay, so be selective. The key thing here is the idea of looking into the future. Okay, how will this then impact your learning? What have you learned from this experience? Remember, the Global Perspectives is a skills-based course. It wants to acknowledge that you have developed some skills, and how are you going to use these skills later on in your education, later on in your life. Okay, so think about that when you're actually reflecting on it. The reflective process, okay, works in 3 ways. Okay, the what is your descriptive part. This is you just telling me what you did. All right. If you just write that, we're not going to get very far and you're not going to score very well. Okay. The so what is why did you do this? Why did you decide that a survey was the best option? Why did you decide to contact a certain NGO? Okay. Why did you decide you had an interest in food waste? All right. That's taking it up to the next level. However, the important part, and this is the really important part if you want to get into the top band marks, is the what next. Okay. That's, if I was going to do this again, what would I do differently? If my survey had gone wrong, why did it go wrong? What would I do to get better results next time? Okay, so you're constantly thinking about ways of improvement. Now, what we've done is put those into a series of questions for you. Okay, you will have a copy of this as a Google slide, so you can actually go through this in your own pace and keep going back and referring to it. But you can see, so if we're looking at the descriptive, you're looking what happened, what did we do? Okay, we want you working on the outcomes more. Okay, how can we do things differently? What questions do I now have that I will need to go? I want to go and explore further. So it's thinking about your learning going forward. All right, so we want to make sure that when we write this, we are covering all three steps. Yes, we do want a bit of descriptive in there, but we need to know why you went through this and what you are going to do next. That's really, really important. So the team project, it's worth 70 marks, okay, and 35% of your final GCSE. Okay, so this is weighted heavily, guys, so you need to spend some time working on this. Okay, it's broken down into two parts. There is a team part and there is a personal part. Of those 70 marks, the team part is worth 10 marks. All right, so this is a part where 4 of the marks is a section that you can collaboratively write as a team. So everyone will have identical sort of what they've written here. You also get 6 marks that's given by your teacher based on how well they think you have worked as an individual within the team. Okay, so that's how they've perceived you through the classes, through interactions and things like that. The other 60 marks is your own personal reflection. Okay, so this is where a lot of the weighting lies. When you submit this, you are going to have to submit 3 things. Okay, you'll have to submit evidence of your outcome. Okay, that might be photographs of you doing something. It might be a poster that you have created. Okay, if you've gone for an advocacy, it might be a video of you presenting to a forum group. It might be anything to show that you did something, that you undertook some form of action. Okay, you'll also then need to submit the company explanation, which we'll talk about in a second, and also the individual reflective paper. Okay, so let's have a look at those 2 parts in a little bit more detail. The individual, the team explanation is only 200 to 300 words. Okay, it covers in terms of what is your aims as a group. Okay, and it wants you to sort of explore how did you decide that this was the right outcomes to do? How did you go about deciding on this project? Okay, so initially you should have undertaken some form of research, whether it be primary research, whether you've gone and spoken to people, and that has what it guided you to undertake this form of action. Okay, so if you decided you were going to set up, for example, a Tetra Pak collection, you might have gone and spoken to a few people within school. You might have gone and spoken to an NGO, worked out that actually there's a big issue right now with Tetra Paks. You might have found, actually, we found a recycling plant in Hong Kong that will take these and come up with an idea that actually we could start a collection drive. That's what we're looking at for in here. And again, we'll give you some examples of how to write that in a second. The personal element, again, we say 750 to 1,000 words. You are going to struggle to get it in 1,000 words. Okay, I will be honest with you. It is tough to try and narrow it down for this. Okay, it is talking about you as a person. Okay, how do you feel? Your outcome, did it work in reflection to your initial aims you set out? It looks about you working or of you reflecting on your work processes. How do you think you did as a team? Did you manage well as a team? Where did you fit as an individual within that team? And it also looks in terms of what have you learned? What is your learning that came out of this? Okay, so two parts to it. All right. Obviously, right now, timeline, we are still working to the same timeline as we would have done if we were in school. So for Da Vinci, Einstein, and Fleming, 17th of February, we are expecting a draft, okay? That will be set up as an assignment in your Google, or basically in the Google Classroom by your teacher. Okay, so that's where that needs to be submitted. So they'll have a draft there. You will then basically get feedback, and then the final piece needs to be submitted in the second week in March. Okay, so we're still working to those timelines right now. Okay, so let's talk about this in a bit more detail. One thing that's important to remember is right back at the start, you chose a topic area to study. Okay. When you reflect back on this, you must do so in relation to one of these 8 topic areas. If you don't, you won't score any marks. Okay. So make sure you are clear in regard to which topic area that you are working on. Now, when you set out the team element, we've set it out in the table like this, and I suggest you do the same. Okay, one thing they look for when they mark this is that you have structured your writing or this reflection clearly, and we highly recommend you use the table, and also that you use subheadings as well. Again, it gives a structure. It's easier for the examiner to mark. Okay, so the topic area that you need to fill out, well, that's just one of those 8 topic areas you've talked about, and we've mentioned in the previous slide. You all came up with a research question, okay, that you were going to look at, and that's what you were going to solve. Okay, you should have also then come up with some aims and objectives. Now, if you remember back, this was the time I think that the protests were actually on, but you should have come up with some what were called SMART targets. Okay, so they were aims that could be measurable. All right, so you would have come up with a series of aims that we are going to achieve this, and they would have been achievable within those timelines. They would have been measurable, and that's something that you're going to need to reflect on. So make sure you've written those in there. We've got a description and evidence of our outcome. So this is where you drop any links, any photographs, videos of you doing stuff, anything that is linked to an outcome. Okay, this is what I did. It's not a place where you go and put reams of communication. Contacting an NGO is not an outcome. Okay, that is part of your research process. That's what you did. Okay, you only need to put in here actual things that you went out. This is what we actually went and did. All right. The final part is outcome linked to cross-cultural research. Now, this is the part where we mentioned about how did you decide on what that this was the best outcome to do? Okay, how did you decide that the outcome here would meet these aims and objectives? Okay, this is where we talk about. You talk to NGOs, you talk to people around the community, you did some secondary research on this topic. Okay, that's what we're going to develop in there. There is an exemplar here. I'm not going to read it to you. Again, you will have a copy of this. and you can go through this at your leisure, okay? But what we've tried to do is put an exemplar of every paragraph that you will need to write for this reflective piece of writing in this PowerPoint. Okay, so you can go back through as and when you need and actually have a look at this. Okay, so this is the sort of thing that we will actually be expecting for you as part of your team element. Now, when you submit this, all of you can have this same piece of writing. Okay, because it's been a team project, you should have all, as a team, written this, and this is the reason why you decided to do the outcome. All right, you didn't decide on it for different reasons. You decided as a collective, this is why we're going to do it. If we start looking at the reflective paper, okay, it's broken down into several parts here again. Okay, the first two parts, okay, I'll just read through. So part one, you're offering a full and in-depth analysis and evaluation on the strengths and limitations of the project outcome in achieving the project aim or aims. Okay. As I said, it doesn't matter if you failed. It doesn't matter if things didn't go to plan. And for a lot of you, that will be the case this year. Okay. You can talk about the coronavirus. You can talk about the protests here. How did they stop you from actually achieving your project aims? However, what else you need to talk about is what could you have done differently, okay, to actually seen if those aims through. Okay, could you have actually started your project a little earlier? Could you have picked up the telephone and spoken to that NGO a little earlier, rather than sending an email and waiting a month for them to respond? Okay, that's the sort of reflective process they want you thinking about. Okay, so as I said, doesn't matter if things didn't go well for you. Okay, as long as you reflect on the process. What did you do? Why did you do it? If I'm going to do it again, what would I do differently? Okay. Next part is for you to evaluate the strengths and limitations of your own work processes. Now, these work processes are things that enabled you to actually manage this project. So project management tools. What did you set up? Did you set up a project management planner? Okay, did that work? How did you guys communicate? Did you have a WhatsApp group? Did you have an email group? Did you have any other forms of social media kind of groups? Okay, it really wants you again to evaluate these processes. Some of them will have worked, some of them won't have worked. Again, be critical about yourself. All right, don't worry about it. This is a reflective process on what things you felt worked, what things didn't work, and what are you gonna do next time. Okay, so always come back to that. Always think about what am I gonna do next time. Okay, just some feedback from the examiner. Make sure there is a balance of strengths and limitations. Okay. I know this year in particular, there might lean slightly more to the limitations, and I do understand that. But you guys have all done some good work as well. Okay, you have all had some strength as a group. Okay, there's things that have worked. You know, certainly I've seen it in my class. Okay, so make sure you're talking about them. Again, we've put in a sample for each one. Okay, so this is an exemplar paragraph for the strengths and limitations of the outcome. This is one for the work process. You will have a copy of this. You can read this in your own leisure. Next part. Okay, again, I won't go through these in all tons of detail, but because most of them are self-explanatory. The benefits and challenges of working as a team, your strengths and weaknesses of your own performance as a team member. Okay, so both of them, make sure we're offering benefits and challenges, strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so they both need to be in there. Okay, and again, that same process. What did you do? Why did you do it? What would you do differently next time? Okay, the two tougher ones, and this is where we're finding students have fallen down in the past a little bit. okay, is what have you learnt about the issue, okay, and your views about different cultural perspectives. In your reflection here, it is really important. It's not we learnt, they want to see what you learnt. Okay, I will reiterate that, because there's one thing they've picked out is in past papers, it's you have to demonstrate some of your own personal learning. You went off and did some secondary research. I learnt this. I went and spoke to an NGO. I learnt this. Okay, so please make sure that you're reflecting on what you've learnt as an individual, not as a group. Okay, the next part is reflecting on your overall practical skills that you feel you have developed in this project. You know, has your time management improved? Have you become a better leader? Have your collaboration skills developed? Okay, those key kind of skill set they want to hear about. Okay, so again, think about what did you do? How are they useful for you in the future? How will you take these new skills and go and keep using them later on in your education and later on in life? Okay, so again, point out what the examiner said. In order to get a level 4 in these areas, students must reflect on their learning from the project in regards to the cultural perspective. Okay, that is who you spoke to. Okay, it's not about what you got from the internet. Cultural perspective is about having to actually speak to people in different places. It also doesn't mean, a cultural perspective doesn't mean I spoke to people in my class. We have to go beyond that. All right. What have you learned about the issue and about your practical skills? Okay. Again, for all 4 of these, there is an exemplar paragraph that you can find in this PowerPoint for you to go through. Again, I'm not going to sort of labor them now. You can go through them in your own time. Finally, the last 15 marks is based on sort of communication. You get these for how you've structured the paper. Okay, so again, this is where I say use subheadings. Okay, it's something that comes back time and time again. It's a lot easier if you use subheadings to break everything up. Make sure it's personal. Okay, it's not the team did this or for in terms of what your learning is. Okay, it's what I learned. Okay, make sure that you find connections between the team and personal elements. So when you're writing your personal reflection, you are linking it back to those first 300 words you wrote in your team explanation. Okay, that is important. If you have used any books, if you have used sources, which you should all have, you need to reference these as well. Okay, so make sure at the end you do have a bibliography or a reference list. Okay, if you need some idea in terms of how to structure this, again, we've put this in. Most of you have used Cite This For Me before. That is the best place for you to actually go and try and build your reference list. Okay, a few things about submitting. Okay, again, when you submit it, make sure there is evidence of your outcome. Okay, that's important. If these are links to Google Docs and Google videos or, you know, whatever it might be, don't only give us access. Remember, these people, the examiners that are marking it, could be based in London, could be based in America, could be based in Timbuktu. All right, they are going to need to access this. So you're going to need to open up the access or the shared access so that everyone and anyone can actually view this. All right, otherwise the examiners will not be able to see evidence of your outcome. Okay, that's really, really important. Otherwise, again, I think I mentioned, subheadings and a reference list. That's going to be key for it. An assignment will be set up on Google Classroom, and that's where you'll hand it in from there. Okay, I'm just going to show you a few other documents, again, that are there to support you. What we'll actually do is set this up. So this is a template that Mr. Davis has put together. What we suggest that you do is actually use this, okay, and actually the subheadings are pretty much there for you already. Use this as your template for writing your draft, okay. So teachers will actually set this up as an assignment so that you can access this. All right. Mr. Davis has also put together another document which for under each section has a series of guiding questions. Okay, so if we have a look at individual research, again, strengths and limitations of your outcome, we've got a series of questions that will help you write it. Don't use all of them. You need to pick and choose what you think are important, but just make sure you go through that process of what, so what next. Okay, okay, don't just write in the descriptive. All right, so again, you've got this document there to support you. All right, we'll also give you a link, okay, to the web page. This takes you here. We've actually uploaded 3 reflections last year. All of these received a grade A. So again, you can have a read through these and have a look at how these have been written also. Any other advice you need, please just let us know. You can obviously contact your respective teachers, or feel free to email Mr. Davis or Mr. Burrow, and we'll happily help you, guide you through this. Good luck, guys, and please keep us posted if there's anything else that you need at all.